Hey, everybody. It is
How's it going?
wonderful to be here again. We're going live. I'm going live today with John Atkinson. Hi, John. Say hi.
How's it going, Guru? How's everyone doing?
Good, good, good. John has been a student of mine for, I don't even, how many years has it been now, John? I'm not sure. Lost track.
2 years now.
2 years.
Wow.
Wow. Look at this happy camper. Awesome. So, John has always been really good at asking great questions, and he prepares them, and then he asks me. We've actually done a series of recordings that I never released, and maybe one day I will. But at this stage, I was banking them. I was putting them in the vault for a later time. But he always comes up with really good ideas and concepts. So I thought he would be great for a live, to do a YouTube live. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I enjoy talking to him. He's a great guy. I'm sure you'll find that out in the next little while as we get into things. So, John,
hmm
little temperature check. How you doing? Everything cool?
Everything's good. And just, I always find our conversation so moving, like you said, Guru, in terms of just really forward thinking on how our mission in terms of supporting the collective can be heightened and how we could serve you viewers viewing this and for future viewers as well. So I would love to dive deeper into, it's the new year. People are looking for new signs or symbols in their lives, or maybe their 2022 didn't go the way they wanted it to. And we always talk about the four bodies. So I thought that would be such a great topic to kick off this live together, is talking about the four bodies. So your spirit, your mind, your physical, and your emotional bodies, and how someone could align those together to have a great year ahead. And I think, if I think of like the first month is setting that tone, setting the foundation, so many people get revved up. And I'm more personally, I like to, I don't say it, but I like to ease into it in terms of getting concrete on what I want to do in those four bodies. So just touch on the four bodies and how you help a lot of your clients, how you've helped me with my four bodies on the daily, and what has been coming up recently. I think with working with clients from you know the ending of last year and the starting of this year.
These are really good questions. It's so funny. This was not planned at all, but I part of the reason why I haven't posted a new video, a teaching video, is because I've been working on a really long one, and it's been taking me a lot longer than expected. And that has to do with a quadotomy, which, yes, is a word I made up, but I did put two words together that can function together anyway, which is for and an otomy. So, like, the video originally, people had been talking to me about duplistic nature and a trichotomy, and that has to do with the mind, the soul and the spirit and the body for the trichotomy. And then for the dichotomy, it had to do with the body and the spirit. But I believe in the school of thought of four bodies, and it has to do with the mind. Yes, but we encapsulate that in a different way. So it has to do with the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual bodies, and how they all play a role in your day-to-day life, and how they're always present. And to achieve ultimate self-mastery, it's really important to heal all four at the same time with any given issue, because each of those bodies are going to give you a different answer as far as what your action step is as far as healing is concerned. And a lot of the time, because you were asking about how it's coming up in my practice, there are obvious gaps in how people are healing themselves or what they've tried before they found me. And sometimes the gaps are in the physical and what they haven't been doing with their physical bodies. And sometimes the gap is they haven't had a spiritual practice at all. They don't know how to connect. or there's some sort of damage that happens, so on and so forth. And then maybe in the mental and emotional, they haven't been able to process through what they've been going through in a way that's helpful for them, or in a way that's of a higher emotional intelligence, and they've been thinking about it in a certain way, and they just needed a few aha moments. And sometimes it's accumulation of all four if they just haven't done the work at all and they just wanted somebody to fix them. But I don't fix people. I support them in their growth. So I don't fix people because I don't believe anyone is broken. I believe everyone has chosen a very specific way to be based on their belief system. And when that happens, people create a very interesting plateau of, a configuration of sorts of what they believe themselves to be, and it just shows on the outside. So that doesn't mean that things are going wrong in their life. It's because things are perfectly landscaping the way that they chose it to landscape based on their belief system. But people don't always understand that, which is why they come to see me, or they go to see other people depending on what they're comfortable with. So, but anyway, so that sort of answers your question. You had a few questions in there, and I know that I kind of skirted around a few, but if there's anything I missed, can you please tell me, and I'll revisit it now, because I went on a tangent.
No, I love that. And I think it goes hand in hand with the next segue in terms of why, as a collective, sometimes in regards to the four bodies, do we hyper focus on one or two of them rather than all four? For example, like right now, it's the start of the new year. The collectives out there moving their physical body. They're in the gym. They're doing, all those things post holiday season per se. And why is it that some of them, or why is it some of us miss all four bodies when we get hyper focused on one or two?
No, that's a really good question, and that's a question that people get lost on a lot. So I'm glad you asked it. It has to do with the fact that a lot of the time it has to do with tangibility. So the physical body is the most tangible out of the four. We know that it's real. We can taste it, touch it, smell it. We can use all of our senses to experience it. And for human beings, it's really important to be able to use all of our senses to know that something is real. Now, once we start getting into the mental and emotional, we start to get into, it's floating out in space. I know that I'm using my mind and I'm thinking and I'm processing, so I know it's real. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, but I can't touch it. I can't smell it. I can't taste it. It's just kind of there. And so and you can see it in society too. So with the physical body, for the most part, for human beings, the most testing, the most studies, the most focus is put on the physical body, period, bar none. And then the next level up, when we're starting to get into the least tangible bodies, which is the mental and emotional, we're noticing that it's not as focused on, and it has to do with its tangibility. And it also has to do with the fact that the mental and emotional body can provide a lot more pain and suffering for people, and people avoid that like the plague because, they want to feel, they just want to feel happy, they want to feel comfortable. But unfortunately, when it comes to growth, if you're wanting to grow, then you get to slide into that agreement with yourself that you're going to allow yourself to feel uncomfortable in order to do so. Otherwise, you're not getting anywhere. So the mental and emotional is also frightening for people because they don't know how. Well, since our ancient ancestors, it came from there. If somebody was acting erratic mentally and emotionally, they might start killing people. They might hurt themselves. They might, because back then there wasn't a handle on, let's be adults about this. Let's not punch each other in the face just because we're feeling frustrated that the meat was undercooked or something. You know what I mean? So it's like so from a very long time ago, and for a lot of people, they still don't know how to handle or maintain their emotional and mental bodies anyway. And that's a real problem because, at this stage, we're not being taught emotional intelligence right from the get go, right from a very young age, right from, you know, as soon as we enter school. It should be immersion. So in Canada, there's something called French immersion, so that you can learn the language. But it's not that you're in a French class and you're learning French. You're in a math class and it's all in French. You're in a science class and it's all in French, so that you can live as someone speaking French. And I think that when it comes to emotional intelligence, it should be the same way. We should be immersing ourselves in that all the time with all of our teachers. All of the teachers should be taught that. They should be implementing that along with the subjects so people know how to deal with each other. So then we get into the least tangible of them all, which is the spiritual body, which also happens to be the most powerful out of all four, right? Because you can literally heal your physical body with your mental and emotional state if you're clever enough. But the spiritual body can heal the mental, emotional, and the physical body just like that because it's that powerful. But people don't know that. People, they think it's something that's like a unicorn, a mythological creature running through the forest. It's actually not. It's who you are. And this power that you have within you can create anything. I mean, and people will whitewash it. Well, yeah, sure, there was that guy that lifted that 5-ton car off of somebody, but he was just full of adrenaline. No, that's your spirit. Your spirit can do anything. Come on, your physical body is not capable of that. It has to do with the strength of your spirit. But so to answer your question, the reason, and I needed to explain all this to set the foundation, but in order for people to, well, the reason why people only focus on a couple is, and it could have to do with a lot of things. It could have to do with the way they were raised. Like you get to focus just on your physical health, and then you can only focus on maybe your mental processing, and how you encapsulate things, and that's it. And then they don't teach about the rest of the stuff. So it might have to do with their upbringing, or even just knowledge, or because they're afraid to look at certain aspects of themselves. But a lot of it has to do with tangibility and believing that something is real or not. That was a little long-winded. I apologize. I hope that I came
Oh,
across okay.
good. You're good. In regards to the emotional and mental part, in terms of people, like I loved how you said about people, how they're brought up. Sometimes the most traumatic years are, 0 to 7, or, their teenage years, is sometimes why they avoid it in their adult life, is the trauma is so deep and so painful that they're like, they don't want to even deal with it, rather than just dealing with physical. Like you said, they could see the results in the mirror. If I don't eat this, I could have that type of situation, where they can't really grasp their emotional pain and trauma, like out of their body, or in a mirror. Like you can't. I always laugh because when people are like, well, I can't see the trauma, I'm like, well, yeah, you can't see the trauma because it's not like a body, or it's not like a painting. It's a feeling. It's tied into your emotional body. So just kind of touch on that in regards to, do people ignore that because the trauma, or what the trauma has caused, they just don't even think about it? Because there's sometimes people, we've all come across that, where, wow, they're in really good physical shape. Maybe they have some sort of spiritual practice, but emotionally they're just all over the place. And that's when you get to know them and peel them back and get to know who they are, it stems back to trauma in their early life.
It's interesting how people, and not only that, but it's interesting how people will uh, don't recognize that the trauma that they're. And I just wanted to say, somebody just told us that they love us, and I love you too. So thank you. I'm grateful, and sorry for misspelling love. I was typing really fast and trying to listen to John at the same time, and sometimes I don't split my focus very well. Anyway, so it's interesting to me how people can uh, maintain a lot of physical uh, trauma within their body, and they start making themselves sick.
Mm.
But and people, it's very widely known that this happens. Be careful, you can't get stressed out or you'll get sick. But
Mhm.
they don't think to find a way to get it out of themselves. Well, they might well, maybe if I eat right. But most of the time they just curl up in bed and say, "Oh, well, I guess this is just the way it is." Well, that's not the case.
Mhm.
Oh, you're welcome. Of course, I'm always gonna return my love to you. I mean, I just anyway, thank you. Um so it's really up to the person to decide that, or to realize, hey, listen, if I'm developing this thing inside of me that's making me sick because of my stress, I get to do something about it because I love myself. And there should be answers out there for me, and what do I do? And to keep digging until you find something. And so, and
Mhm.
that's a big part of my practice, has to do with physical extraction of the different types of stresses that people put in their body, so they can walk away and they actually feel better. Because I get
Mhm.
to lift it from every body. So when it comes to the physical body, I let them know the different types of things that they get to do in order to purify the body and make sure that you're in a clean environment, and that you know you're not subjecting yourself to a lot of chemicals. And the one subject that John actually really knows a lot about is water. And we're a large percentage of us physically is water. We're, what is it? And you'll know, John, you'll know the exact number. It's around, what, 70% water? And if you're not
Yeah,
putting, right?
70.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
if you're not putting the right amount or the right kind of water in your body, which is what you're comprised of, then your health goes down the toilet. It's just,
Mhm.
but people don't think about that. And then
Mhm.
we look at Dr. Emoto, and I'm going off on another tangent, but I'm just kind of a bit of a flow of thought here. But if we look at Dr. Emoto's teachings when it comes to the frozen water and the snowflakes, we can also surmise that. And if you guys aren't aware of what that is, definitely look up Dr. Emoto. But he did this entire doctrine on freezing water at just, and I think he took it from all different types of places too. But he would sit there with the water and he would emotionally input different types of things into the water. Like on the bottle, the water bottles, he might write, "I hate you, you make me sick." Even saying that is terrible. I feel like I can't even say that. And then because I just don't have hate in me anymore. Oh, so, and then the other ones would be, "I love you so much, I'm grateful." And then he would observe under a microscope what this water looked like. And so whenever he would pour love into uh any of these different types of water samples, and he'd look at it under a microscope, he would see that these beautiful configurations, these beautiful snowflakes, it's just like gorgeous, appealing to the eye. But the ones that he subjected to, dislike or distaste or wrath or something like that, they would look destroyed. They would look rotten. They would look. I mean, it was really sad. So forgive my tangent, John. I
No,
love you, bud.
it's good because it's we're flowing so just like the water. In terms of Guru, the purification, because you did touch on that and how important that is, and to back it up to what you said, people getting sick and telling themselves I'm getting sick, or just think of the 2 years how ingrained we were being told this, and that. That's been going on for a long, long time, you guys. And it's not just this, but it was elevated and magnified by the masses. And look how many people are sick, whether it's kids getting cancer nowadays, or just so many diseases and things happening to our body suits overall. And it all starts with what we're talking about is the four bodies all interconnected. And as a result, you get to see different people having those human experiences throughout whatever we're telling ourselves daily. Just like you said, Guru, about the water. What are we telling ourselves daily? Like, I suck, or I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm happy. I'm unconditional love, uh, which is so vital in how we talk to ourselves. The I wanted to circle back around to the purification part, as when I first started working with you, is you hit on that, on just the observation is for myself in my life was, it was, what was it? It was a lot of, like, fragrances, so, like, used to love wearing cologne and things of that nature, and this is just, you guys, to put this in perspective for all our lives, our environments that we are in, whether it's out of, out in the open or in our homes, there's so much toxicity around us, things that we eat, things that you were saying, Guru, that we drink, um, even things we're told or we listen to or we're consuming on our phones or social media. And it goes back to what we're trying to do here is we're adding value to the collective. You guys, we love you guys so much. Uh, but back to the purification, Guru, you were telling me about the fragrances when I first started working with you. And I always had like a runny nose when I woke up, always just all these different things. And I cut them all out and my life changed drastically, you guys. I changed my laundry detergent. I changed my deodorant. I used to love cologne, and you can make an incredible fragrance from essential oils, and those go back so many, so many decades and things of that nature. Just touch on real quick, Guru, the purification of the body in terms of, I think the collective always thinks we need to make this giant pivot, and you've always told me, well, John, if we just make minor little adjustments and little pivots, then when we zoom out, we see like, whoa, we've made some big strides. I think so many times people focus like, I need to be here to go there, rather than just like, oh, just look up and look at a new box and take that off the shelf and like open it and check it out. So that for me, you guys, that was the fragrances in terms of purification. And that's only one, I would say 1/16 of my pivots since then up to this point. So just touch on a little bit how people could purify and make a higher choice that aligns with where they want to go and who they want to be.
Yeah, it's really important. So when John came in, one of the very first things that I said to him was, "You get to change your laundry soap." And he said, "What's wrong with it? Doesn't it smell nice?" And I said, "No." And the reason I said that is because it was filled with chemicals and it was actually making my nose run because I've taken all the chemicals out of my life. And when you take the chemicals out of your life, everything changes. Not only do you feel a lot better, you're able to actually be in your spiritual body in a much more powerful way. So if you're really trying to connect to spirit, to your soul, to your highest self, to God, then you get to really start taking out the toxins and everything. And he was. So John was. So I said, the very first thing I said to him was, you got to stop this. You're making me sick just by being around you because, my nose was running. And of course, after he left, I was recovering for about an hour. I know that sounds like a victim story. I don't mean it that way. I just mean once you extract certain things from your life, you realize how toxic it is for your body. So anyway, so he said, "Oh, okay," and he did, and that was it. And John has a very special type of purification water machine that can actually create soap. So he went as natural as it went with that, and then he would. If I remember correctly, John, you decided to put in a couple of essential oils in there just to make your clothes smell a little bit nice.
Uh-huh.
And then, and his life changed. And then I said, okay, well, what about the other stuff? What about your toothpaste? What about your shampoo? What about any kind of products that you're putting on your skin? What about the stuff you clean your house with? What about, do you use air fresheners in your car? What else are you using that's filled with chemicals that you got to get out? And then I think you were already pretty mindful about the food as far as I remember. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much, with my background, you guys, in produce for the last 10 years, so I was mindful of that for sure.
Yeah. So the food was already in the wheelhouse for you. And then And then so we basically rounded up all the chemicals and said no, and then we chucked them in the garbage, and then John's life changed. But I think what I'd really like to hear from you is about how your life changed, so people can understand the value of what what it can do for them if they decide to go that route.
Yeah, I like that question. I think you don't know until you do or you commit to a decision like that. And so I knew all my symptoms. So I woke up every day uh, with a runny nose. I had a stuffy nose. I had a little bit of brain fog, you guys, from the toxic chemicals that I was sleeping in for 8 hours through the laundry detergent. On top of that, the cologne alone, having that daily is maybe not attracting who I want in my life. And I'll go an extra layer, and this could be above some people viewing their mind right now, but we could dive into it later. Or is when you have fake fragrances on yourself, no one could smell your natural scents. So I'm talking about like in the dating segment, or even in real life, as like now that I've been off of fragrances, is you could really tell who smells good and who smells bad, and it doesn't have to be an intimate way. I could be out in public in a restaurant and someone comes by, female or male, with really strong fragrance, and I that's who I used to be. I used to love spraying that cologne, and you just like, whoa, I was that person. Um, and I used to wear all that stuff, but it actually, you have your own scent. And when you explained that to me, I was like, wait, no way. And so your body's actually like detoxing all of that, and then you create your own. You have your own scent where you're attracting things into your life that align with your higher self, and that's the purest. How could you be the purest form, right, of yourself to your higher self here in the earthy body? And so it just, my major thing to share with you guys is we all have symptoms of something, but it's what do we decide to commit to see that drastic change. So for me, it was like, okay, not just told you, but I told so many people. I would wake up imagine waking up every day just having a stuff, and people do, and they don't want to do anything about it, or they don't think like what we're talking about. What are they, the fragrances, this, and it goes beyond that, the air quality in their homes, and
Yeah,
uh, the dust and the toxic bleaches and cleaning things, and
the
we live
air
in a,
fresheners and the
yeah, the air fresheners, or even now it's like candles. There's so much coming out about candles and
yep,
how they're made. Uh, we don't think about it, or we don't zoom out enough to make that decision. And so with that information provided you guys from this conversation, it's like, what are you suffering from that can be an easy change? I wouldn't say it was easy, it just made sense. So when I tried it and I got results where I was waking up more energetic, I was less brain fog to connect, on my power hour, quiet time. Uh, the nose was good, and energetically just waking up, not feeling like a toxic mess, which you realize how toxic you were when you were doing like living out a different lifestyle. And one can say, well, it's just fragrances. I get that all the time. Well, it's just fragrances. It's like, no, those all add up. It's like, okay, I was doing the cologne and stuff. Then you get in your car and it's like you have your air freshener and the air blowing on you. And then you have your shampoo or your body wash or your toxic deodorant that's getting it. It all adds up. And so no wonder as a collective, we're so sick, and the detoxing is so. I think this year what I feel for the collective is we're really finding out a lot of things that we've put a blind eye to in terms of detoxing the four bodies, and that's why we're talking about this. So it
yep,
always fires me up, and I'm always thinking like, what can I cut next, or what can I also add to? I think people always think, well, if I cut the cologne, what am I going to do? I think that was my question. Well, am I going to smell bad? Naturally it's like your body, like what you touched on the food is if we're eating healthy and, uh, pure foods, whole foods, and being aware of what we're putting in our body, we shouldn't smell as bad minus like working out really hard. And that's what I noticed too, you guys, is the purification of your body, and your body knows and your spirit knows more than the brain does. And so just those little pivots really helped. But yeah, I think that answered your question. It was kind of a long answer.
No, it's
Uh,
okay. I actually have another question.
okay.
So I want to know how cutting out the chemicals supported you with connecting to your highest self. Some people call it higher self. Some people call it God. Some people, the universe, however you want to say it is fine by me. It all means the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
how did cutting out those chemicals support you with a higher connection to that part of yourself that is the smartest part of yourself, the spirit, you know what
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to say, right?
Of course. So my connection with God on my quiet time, I wouldn't have to like go blow my nose, right? If any of us have ever been part of like meditation and then something like happens and it throws off your meditation, it could be very interrupting. So I was having those interruption times where I was like in a good flow, and then it's like my nose would just be like runny, like crazy, and I would have to go like blow my nose or have a Kleenex next to me. And that's just, it kind of goes on to our next topic of it's an extra layer, you guys, of distraction between you and God. And so that's what it was for me, is just there's so many things that are distracting to our relationship with God. And so by cutting that out, I was able to focus more. Like I really changed where in my room I have my quiet time, as I really changed that. So think about it. If I wasn't washing my sheets in dirty laundry detergent, like gnarly fragrance, that cut out. So I wasn't smelling that anymore. I was not using colognes. I was diffusing essential oils instead of like air fresheners. So it really, to answer your question, just created a stronger bond with God because I wasn't distracted by, um, getting preoccupied by doing bodily things in terms of like blowing my nose and like, oh my gosh, like just interrupting my practice. And that's a topic we could talk about too, is like when you're doing your practices, you want to be in that flow state. You want to have that connection full,
Yeah.
uh, on high. And so that was my biggest takeaway. And that, you guys, that was like one minor decision. And that point on, I just kept thinking like, what else can I cut out? Like I came back like, what else can I do? Yeah, even in the food stuff, it was like for a while there, you guys, I was just like cutting out so much stuff and just going more ancestral because that's what my body wanted. And for a while there too, it was like not eating, and people were like, what, you didn't eat? But we don't have to eat as much as we really think, and that's a whole nother topic. But uh yeah, it was just really getting in the way of my practice, and just was very distracting to what my potential, and we talk about this all the time, Guru, what is our potential in our practice to take that to another level. And that's always my hope when I do my practices, is like, how can I be better? How can I show up better for myself in that practice? So
Yeah, and that's self-love. And I would say, just to piggyback on what you said, just so that we're um, fully encapsulating the point that was trying to be made, is that uh, it's it's not just about distraction, but it's also about how the chemicals physically mess with your mind to the point where it makes it more difficult to connect to that part of yourself. It's almost like it creates, you were talking about more of a physical shield, but
yep.
on the spiritual side of things, and how the physicality translates to the spiritual, if that makes any sense, is that the chemicals actually get in the way of your purification. And
Mm.
purification is the key to connecting to that part of yourself and claiming your power. And so if you put things in the way that's going to stop you from being powerful, such as chemicals and polluting your body, then you're not going to make the connection to that part of yourself the way that you want. It's just not going to happen. So while you were talking, and it's very true, part of it is a distraction, and that's really important. But part of it is how your body is actually being affected. And you talked about that. It's like, you know what? I wasn't feeling well. My nose was running. I didn't even know why. And that's true. And you take that out of the way. But there's other things that are doing push-ups behind the scenes that were also creating a problem that maybe you weren't even aware of, that was creating blockages towards that part of yourself, because you were putting a bunch of chemicals on your body in your and you're breathing it in, and it's going right into your bloodstream, and then it's affecting you. So it's really about purification, and purification is important so that you can connect with that part of yourself. So just wanted to say that, because that was really important along with what we were saying.
I love that. In terms of purification, I think this month in general, and it happens every year, is people get hyper focused on like a juice cleanse, or I need a detox. What would you say in terms of the four bodies and living that out? Is there's obviously seasons of our four bodies, but being consistent, how do we achieve purification throughout?
So part of what I got from what you said is that maybe purification gets to happen year round, and I completely agree with that. Some people decide that the new year is about, suddenly I'm going to do this, suddenly I need a detox, but really it should be taken care of all year round and seasonally, and you really get to listen to your body to make sure you know what to do and when. So as far as a detox is concerned, yes, I mean, maybe the new year people realize that, hey, because of everything that happened in the last couple of months, my liver is shot. I did a lot of extra drinking around the holidays. I get to do a liver cleanse. And yes, that's logical. But it should be consistent. You should be doing these types of things all the time. And it should be a purification of all four bodies, not just the physical. So if you're purifying the physical, sure, it might look like a detox. Maybe you want to do a liver cleanse. Maybe you want to get the parasites out of your body. Maybe you want to do a fast, or do a juice fast, or just do an air fast, or just a water fast. There's so many different types of fasts you can do. Just to reset the body, because if the body isn't focused on digesting food, it has a chance to heal different parts of your body that wouldn't ordinarily be have the energy to do it. Because when you're digesting food, it's focused on that. Food isn't digesting, it starts to repair things. It's the way it works. It's why a lot of people will do they'll fast in the morning, and maybe they'll only eat during a certain time, maybe between 5 and 8 they can only eat food during that time. So, but purification gets to happen all the time. So with physical, those are just parts of it. And we talked about the chemicals, but then when we're talking about the emotional and mental, we're going into a purification of, okay, so are you judging people harshly? Are you, how are you thinking about yourself? Are you loving yourself? Are you understanding, are you cleaning up your thought processes? Are you understanding are you recognizing the patterns that work and don't work? And are you, changing up your patterns into something that's more effective? What level of purification are you going with your emotional body? Are you taking accountability for the fact that you created your life, and that, that it's not always somebody else's fault that you feel a certain way, you choose to feel a certain way? These are aspects of purification as well. Bottom line, if you learn how to love yourself unconditionally, a lot of these things go away immediately. So, the judgment stops with everyone. You just love everyone unconditionally. And, a lot of these harsh behaviors and thought processes go away. So if you just focus on that one thing, you're going to tick a lot of boxes right away. So as far as purification, that would be the fast track in those two bodies. And then with spiritual, it's funny because people just don't understand the types of things that they pick up on a day-to-day basis, just walking around the world. If, let's say you were feeling suicidal as an example, and maybe you created a crack or a break in your energetic field, your auric field, or what have you. And if there happens to be the wrong place, the wrong time, just like any virus or any type of thing, you might develop some sort of spiritual type of infection of some kind that you get to purge out. And the best way to keep that clean is with a solid spiritual practice and making
Mhm.
sure that everything stays purified. And there's a lot going on spiritually that people are just not aware of. And
Mhm.
a lot of it's going to sound like BS because there's tons of people out there that try to take your money and say, oh well, there's darkness eating you and you need to pay me like $5,000 or you're going to die, that kind of thing. I'm not talking
Mhm.
about that kind of mindset at all. But there are things, that you just get to maintain, just like all your other bodies. You get to make
Mhm.
sure your physical body is healthy. You get to make sure your mental and emotional body is healthy. The spiritual body is just as important, if not more so than the rest, because it is who you are actually. It's who you
Mhm.
are. And so if you're ignoring that one and just paying attention to all the other ones that are lesser than, then you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Mhm.
So,
Wow. I love just the power behind that in terms of just one taking initiative to do that. I think we talk about it, or I bring it up of just observing as we all get to choose working on that. And some people choose not to, and that's totally fine. We, like you said, we still love them and unconditionally, and we let them go do their thing. And the ones that commit, it's always joyful to watch just people commit to upgrading their four bodies and changing. There's just something really nice about that, about our humanness, and we all admire other humans for doing that or doing those commitments. So uh, I love that. In terms of people tuning in, Guru, what are some top books? I know some, we got probably some readers, or I know I love to read, you love to read. What are some books that you are maybe have read or you're looking forward to, or that you would recommend for this year? I'm always looking for new books. I know you've helped me out in the past. Uh, what would you?
I think it's best to talk about one of the books that I recommended to you that started to change your perspective on spirit and how you feel about yourself,
Mhm.
which is Conversations with God, where you could just take little snippets of what you were reading and apply it to your life and how it opened your eyes. So maybe that would be a good place to start. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, I love that. So, Conversations with God, you guys, is a book. It's called Conversations with God: An Uncommon Dialogue. And I think one has an idea of our relationship with God, or we have a relationship with God, or maybe we don't. And this book really dives into our preconceived notions of what it looks like, and what, there's no cookie cutter process. I'm always a firm believer we all have our different relationship with ourselves, with God. And so it dives deeper into a full blown conversation with God, like He's writing across from you what you're saying and what you're asking, and it's really channeling a lot of things in that moment. And I know for myself, sometimes I would just have to like be on that page for a few days because it was so powerful, and the ideas behind it is, if you were writing the book yourself, I always put myself in, I forgot the author, it's um, in his shoes, writing it out, writing these questions that everyone basically has, and God responding to it. So very thought provoking and very real in terms of digesting it. And sometimes it could be above your head, which a lot of the times it was for me on a lot of instances. And you just have to digest it, come back to it. But it's one of those books where you have to read it more than one time, I think, and it's one to live by. Uh, and there's a lot there's a lot of blessings and miracles in that book, and I say that in regards to you don't expect what's going to be on the next page. It's not one of those ones where you're like, I think I have it downstairs, but you're like flipping through and kind of like, oh, I'm going to look for this conversation. It's front cover to back cover, and yeah, it's just really created, which I'll get into next, is it's created a new language for myself in regards to how I speak, how I carry myself, what questions do I have. And that's really what the book has changed my life is we don't ask enough questions. We talk a lot and we babble a lot in our collectiveness, but we don't really listen. And this book allowed me to listen like, okay, what is God saying in each and every moment? God's loving awareness in the moment, always there. And what we go off of in terms of learning is we have choices, we have free will, and it touches on that again in the book. But we have free choice to do what we want, and that's a powerful thing. And yeah, it's I don't want to spoil too much, Guru, because it's one of those things where yeah, I think, and this is just in my view, is it's a must read for everybody looking for a sign or anything in terms of like what you said earlier in this of how can I conceive it, right? I see my physical body, I see that, but like this book really lays it out in terms of a loving relationship with God that in our mind we and the ego wants to take over is we don't think sometimes what God really is, and we play small sometimes or we overplay, and it's really powerful book. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I know it wasn't too specific because I didn't want to reveal too much. It's like where do you even start? It's just like a I would just nickname that the book of life. It's just the book of life, and a lot of the experience or the questions is what we've all experienced in our life, and there is some common ground. It's not just like so high strung on his specific questions, but it's things that we think about like successes, fears, failures, death, relationships. It embodies the human experience altogether. And so that's my biggest takeaway and recommendation is that. Did you want to add anything to that?
I do. If we're there's so many books that are so amazing, and it's really difficult to just mention one or two because what what's going to work for one person is not going to work for another. We're all different people, and so it's difficult just to highlight a couple because I really would like to serve everyone as opposed to just maybe one or two people. I do like the map of consciousness. There's it's really interesting when you break down consciousness in a certain way, and you can look at the different types of ways our consciousness is reactive in the world, and you study the patterns. It teaches you a great deal about how you can move forward with grace, I guess. So there is a theory that, you know, as far as the map of consciousness, there are let's just give them different points of, as you raise up the bar in consciousness. At the very bottom of the scale, we're talking about shame, and right in the middle of the scale would have to do with courage, and where you could go either way. So everything between courage and the bottom being shame is going to pull you down, and everything between courage could go either way, and then going up all the way to enlightenment is going to pull you upwards in an upward energetic fashion. Meaning, once you start living your life a certain way, your consciousness will kind of naturally pull you towards a specific type of energetic assimilation. Meaning, so if you're living a positive life, I don't even want to say that. So if you're living because I break it down into pillars and I do all kinds of things. So as if the pillar of who you are, meaning who you believe yourself to be all the time and standing. So I stand as the embodiment of unconditional love towards everything and everyone all of the time. But I stand in neutrality. And I say that because I see the whole landscape. I don't judge people for what they're going through. I don't necessarily see black and white, and I see a lot of shades of gray, and I see people for who they are and what they're presenting themselves to be and who they believe them to be, as opposed to coming from my vantage point, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I don't do that. I've taken that out of my life a long time ago. So standing in neutrality and observing the landscape is really important, because then you can see the whole picture and it makes you more intelligent. So, but if you're only viewfinding one little area and you're only seeing the lens of your life through a judgment of jealousy, self-hatred, whatever, you're only going to see a very, very small amount of the information that's available, and that's not intelligence. That's closing yourself off to the world and what's really going on around you. You're going to miss a lot of info. So if you start living in neutrality, then you're going and having your pillar to maintain, because you're going to decide who you want to be all the time, and that'll keep you in integrity all the time of how you want to live. Then you're going to see the world in a totally different way. And people somehow they think that using judgment is going to anchor them into, well, I want to be good, so if I use judgment, I'll always make sure that I'm good because I'm judging everyone to make sure that I'm still good, and if they're good, and if they're not good, then I'm going to judge. Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop it. Just, who you are, feel confident in that, and then love everyone unconditionally. Because if you can do that, then you can just see where people are coming at from their own perspective. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. Everyone has formulated their life in a very specific way, and it's never going to be like yours necessarily. And it shouldn't be, because
Right.
all of their circumstances, conditions, life experiences have built them into to be who they've become to this point. Has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with you, and it never will. So trying to encapsulate someone, put them in a box, like, no, you have to think like me, you got to be like me because this is the way it is. No, it's really not. It's the way you think it is. It's the way you believe it to be for you, and that's fine. And that gets to be respected. But everyone else is doing the exact same thing in their own way, and that gets to be respected just as much.
Mm-hmm.
So, living in neutrality, seeing the landscape, and then starting to take all of these other things out of the picture, just so that you can negotiate your life in a way that makes more sense, is the most logical way to go, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, shame, and then, just the map of consciousness, going back to the book, I believe that, that that particular book is actually really amazing, and it's really dense. So if you're not, it's not a simple read. So if you have a hard time with that kind of material, then maybe not. Then you might want to go with Conversations with God to start off with, because that's easier to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So what are
I
your thoughts?
I liked how you said neutrality, and just from what I've learned from you is exactly what you said, is pulling it all and laying it. You said it beautifully. Is the not the foundation, but the whole. What did you say?
Landscape?
Yeah, the landscape. Yeah, like you're overlooking, like with the viewpoint, and that comes from zooming out uh, and really looking of what's going on, and not, like you said, not judging, seeing where people are at, they're there, and a lot of times it's just what their soul contract gets to play out in their curriculum while they're living here, and we just continue to love people for who they are. And I just love the landscape part because that's helped me personally, and then also the neutrality of, oh, that's the landscape they're looking from.
Yeah.
Even though maybe we all see things differently, that's their landscape. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to take that neutrality, you know, that circumstance. Or so that's been super helpful. I think that's a big message, Guru, right now, is so many times people just from viewing the collective is very judgy of like certain things that even we're talking about, purification, just being better, making higher choices. And it's just like come at a neutral angle or neutral viewpoint, and it moves mountains. For me, it's moved mountains in my business, in terms of maybe a business partner thinking something and I'm seeing it something else, and just having a neutral viewpoint of like, oh, this is what I see, what do you see? And there's more flow to a neutral viewpoint in saying like, oh, I see it a different way. I, like you said, I appreciate how what you're doing or how you see it. This is how I see it. It doesn't mean you have to see it this way. This is just a neutral viewpoint. And then also just in general with relationships is the non-judgment and just being neutral and not, I mean, obviously there's times where you have to speak your truth, and we could talk about that on a whole nother topic, but being neutral is like, I think over the last year and a half has helped me just have so much peace of mind of that's just them, I love them for whoever it is I'm speaking to, or even random strangers, that's what they're playing out. We all have our own little movie going. The book, and I want to give a big credit to my friend Chris, and it goes what you were saying, and I actually have a copy for you, Guru, if you haven't read it, is this one right here, Conscious Language. And it ties into the map of consciousness, because when we have a higher form of conscious language, and I was going to ask you this, is when our conscious language rises, our consciousness rises, and how does that correlate? And so this book touches on, we're all basically, we ramble a lot or we babble a lot, and that's where we've come as a collective. And this book touches on getting back to deleting 200 to 300 words that we don't really need, and upgrading our language to map out exactly what you were talking about, map out your consciousness. So am I courageous? What do I choose? And sometimes one of the chapters, was it the other day I was reading, and when people say something and it might not be relatable, or you don't want to bring on that energy, you just mindfully say like cancel, clear. And it's interesting when you start, and it gives you like little circumstances of things to live out. And when I did that for a while, like um, in my day job, I would do that because there's customers that come in and they're like, this is awful, this product's awful, and maybe it has 5-star reviews, and this is their only 1-star review. You just kind of go, oh, you listen to them, you come from the landscape of neutrality, and they walk away and you go cancel, clear. You don't take on anything else, because we've all done it, as we take it on. Oh my, yeah, that's my favorite, oh whatever. uh, but yeah, this book, Conscious Language, by Robert Stevens, that's going to change my life this year. So just wanted to share that. But I have a copy if you don't have a copy, Guru.
Oh, thanks. That's nice. I always like to check out new books. So I wanted, because you were talking earlier about what happens with, uh, you know, maintaining neutrality doesn't mean you're not going to take a stand, because that the stand would come from your pillar, right? So observing the landscape in neutrality and non-judgment is definitely something that gets to be maintained. But if you are to the pillar is who you are all the time, and how you're feeding the landscape, how you're decorating the landscape. So as an example, as before I said, if I'm standing as the embodiment of unconditional love towards everything and everyone all of the time, then if you're going to notice that that's not happening in your world, then the very first thing you're going to do is take a stand. So if it's not loving towards yourself, if it's not loving towards somebody else, and this isn't about, being rude to somebody. It's not about that, but sometimes if it's, and you get to not judge, you get to assess whether it is appropriate or not to do it in every situation based on your pillar. But there are times where you're going to end up taking a stand, and just say, no, this isn't loving towards me or you. This can't happen. So it actually is a very, very, very strong stand to take. It's the strongest stand you can take. It's the most difficult, but it absolutely doesn't make you a doormat. And so if you're standing in neutrality, but you're taking that stand as well, and you're noticing when things aren't loving, then your world really changes.
Mm.
You begin to see everything in a way that it opens up like a flower. Honestly, it's just the knowledge that comes through is ridiculous. So
Mhm.
it's a very important thing to do. And unfortunately, if people are still, thinking in a way of, well, I got to judge everyone, and I don't like myself, so I'm going to punish myself with this, and or if they're being petty, or if they're not really working on that part of their mind and to develop it into a consciousness that would be akin to the highest consciousness that you have, so that they meet eye to eye, and so the veil lifts for you, then
Mhm.
you're really not going to get very far. But in order to do that, you get used to the idea of feeling comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Anyway.
I liked how you said not being a doormat too, and in terms of that message gets, it's almost like it just channeled so much more and or it flows so much better when we speak our truth, and in that pillar when, because we've all been through it where it's like that time where do you say something or do you hold back and stay in neutrality? No, I'm going to say something because I love this person or love this whatever the situation at hand. That's the tides rising us both up or multiple people up in the conversations, or uh but how do you, one would ask, how would you distinguish one being called up in how do I say this? Is how do you not overdo that? Because we all have witnessed people that, like you say, they speak up way too much in every circumstance, and it's like, I don't want to deal with that person. We all
Well,
have
well,
this.
that's ego. That's ego, right? So that has nothing to do with uh, and maybe people, if they're just being introduced to this topic, they wouldn't know that. But so if you're truly connecting to yourself in that way, and you're aligning yourself with unconditional love, your ego goes out the window, right? But so when you start doing that, when you actually put that into play, then something interesting happens to your consciousness. You begin to connect to something higher than yourself. And that thing that is higher than yourself starts to give you direction. And you obey, basically. You just say, okay, yeah, you're right. I should just wait. Oh, I should say something here. And if you're listening and you're just moving along with that, because it's the highest part of you, it's your spirit, it's that part of you that is so intelligent, and all it wants to do is move you in the direction so that you can, meet your highest dreams and aspirations in this lifetime. That's all it wants for you. So it wants to give you everything. So if you start listening and you start hearing that voice, that's why purification, what we talked about, was so important, so that you can hear it to the highest capability that you have, that you're capable of at all. Then you can start to be moved in that way. And once you move in that way, suddenly, in those situations, you're that person that knows exactly what to say and when to say it, and walks away, and people are going, "Whoa, what just happened? That was amazing! Like, how did they know how to do that?" But it's not. But it's our birthright. Everyone's birthright and destiny to do that. It has nothing to do with that person being special. They just figured it out before you did. That's all. So everyone can do that. But it's just, you get to a point where you're just listening. You're actively listening. Like, what is the right thing to do? All I want is to be my pillar. All I want is to be unconditional love. So what do I do? I don't want to do this out of ego. What do I do? What should I do here? And then it answers, and then you follow, and that's it.
Got it. Got it. I love that clarification for the viewers. Uh in terms of, as we've been talking about this on this live, is the doing versus the being. So doing is the function of the body, and being is the function of the soul. And kind of clarify that, because I feel like for myself, in viewing, my life or where we're at in the world today, is there's just so much doing and so much exhaustion in that, rather than just be that person, be you, be yourself, and we kind of, as a culture, beat that too, is like, just be yourself, it's like, well, they can't be themselves because they're doing way too much, and hyper focus on the doing. If they just kind of, step back a little bit. And I think there's so many things behind just doing. I got to do this. I got to do that. And you hear it. So, I'm here at the store. I got to go do that. I got to do this. It's just like, just be who, who you are, and just kind of clarify the being versus the doing of the body and the being of the soul.
Oh, that's really beautiful. No, I like it. So there's so much to unpack from what you said. So I'm just trying to figure out what to say first. So you're right. A lot of people get stuck in the idea of uh, doing way too many things, but there's so many different reasons why they do that. All right, and so part of it has to do with some people feel if they make their lives as busy as they can, they don't have to face their stuff. That's part of it. So for so if we take that section of people out, then we can talk about other people who are they just want to be better at their lives, and so they're trying to do things, but it doesn't become an isness. It doesn't become a part of their soul yet. But they want it to be, but instead of it becoming who they are, they're doing a lot of things to try to implement that. With that being said, it's a very important stage to go through in order for it to become an isness. Some people call fake it till you make it. So there's a transitionary period of you practicing something until it becomes who you are. And that aspect is very important. But as far as some of the ways you were denoting how some people, they get so lost in the doing, they forget how to be. Yeah, I mean, and in some ways that can be very crippling for people, and it can be toxic depending on why they're doing it. But in some cases, people are doing it because they're trying to transform their lives, and they get to go through that transition, and eventually they will become who they're striving to be. But for the people who are busy doing because they're avoiding, or because, you know, that there's a lot, let's face it, most of it has to do with avoidance. There's a lot of different reasons, and it's very difficult unless I have case studies in front of me and then I can dissect it for you. And I don't have any, I just have, a concept right now in front of me. But that's, did I unpack that right for you?
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
you could, obviously no case studies, but you've seen thousands of clients in terms of when people come to you, do you think they're so involved in the doing, maybe not doing it in terms of to become it, rather than just busy overlays of layers of their trauma, and kind of unpack that? Because I think what I was getting out of what you were saying is people do too much to cover up what they want to deal with is what their trauma is. But then those are the same type of people that they want growth, or they're posting stuff on social media. I want growth, this and that. It's like,
Mm.
well, you choose, we're just observing, but what's really going on? And then they may come see you and you're unpacking all of this for them right in front of them.
Yeah, it just depends on the person and why they're doing what they're doing. But there is, when people get lost in, it's almost like they're getting lost in the matrix, or they're getting lost in their ego, and they've decided that they're going to believe a bunch of stories about what's happening in their lives, and they're not cutting through the illusion and getting to the quick of it and seeing things for what they are. And a lot of people do that. It's very easy to get lost in stories while we're on this planet. It's just what we all do. We love stories so much. There are so many books and movies and songs all have stories, TV shows, you name it, jokes or stories. Everything's a story. We are storytellers. We love stories. We get lost in them. That's why we listen to them. That's why we enjoy them so much, because we get into that story and then we become it. And we do it in our own lives a lot. So in order for us to really see what's going on, we get to step back and say, whoa, all of this is a story. How do I start seeing things for what it is? So when it comes to people going through the machinations of their trauma, or, they truly believe that this person was really being cruel to them when really they weren't. That was just how it was being received to them, and they haven't done the healing yet that allowed them to be able to absorb feedback in a way that that was healthy for them. But people create a lot of stories about other people in the world on the outside because they're so ingratiated in watching this film that they're not stepping back from that viewfinder to really look and say, wait, if I'm in a big story, then what's really happening here? Because there's a lot of doing, and it's a lot of it is illusion for sure. So how do we step back from that? Is the real question.
That's big. The illusions that people get caught up on the story part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they do. And so, actually, I think it was it in the Four Agreements? I think it might have been one of his books, anyway, where he talked about people going into a movie theater. And so the story goes like this. And I might be butchering this a little bit for my own agenda. So if I do, I apologize in advance. So, so people, so you walk into a movie theater. There's no one there. You sit down. You watch this movie. You're watching a movie of your life, and it's just the screen, and that's all you can see. Actually, I already butchered this. You're already in the theater, but you're just watching the movie and you believe it to be true. I don't believe you walk in or anything like that. That was just my imagination. So I created a story. So yeah, and then all of a sudden you realize you don't have to look at the screen anymore, and you look around and you're like, oh my god, I'm in a theater and this isn't real. Whoa, this is crazy. But you were observing how you see your life, and you observe, how you've been feeling and acting this whole time. So you get up, you walk out of your theater, and then you notice there's a bunch of other theaters. And, one is labeled mom and dad and other people. So you walk into the one that says mom, and you notice your mom is sitting alone in this theater and she's watching a movie of her life, and you sit beside her and she doesn't see you. And then you're like, okay, well, what is she watching? And then you notice that how she sees you in her life has nothing to do with how you see yourself. And how she sees herself has nothing to do with how you see her. And she sees your dad in a way that has nothing to do with how you see your dad, and it's very confusing for you. But she doesn't wake up, she doesn't see you because she's too busy fixated on the movie, which is what we all do. And then you're like, okay, well, she's not waking up, so I guess I'll leave, and you'll go into another theater and it's the same story. Everyone's seeing everyone in such a different way. And then all of a sudden you get confused, like, what's the truth? If the truth isn't what I believe about myself and other people, and my mother's viewpoints is seeing it in a totally different way, and that's how her truth, that's how she's living her life. And if that's a possibility, then, and only one possibility can be real, then what am I going to do? Because I just walked into 5 different theaters and they all see things differently. So what's the truth? Well, the answer is none of it's the truth, and all of it's the truth. And no, there is not one single answer for how to live and see life. All of us have decided what our lives are and what it means to us. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it also doesn't mean that there's one truth. It's all truth. That's why you can't judge people for their lives. They've created their own structure and their own idea about what it means to be alive, and all of their circumstances and conditions have brought them up to that point. So it's not like you can sit there and say, well, you're wrong based on my own experiences. Your experiences mean nothing in their life. They built their entire life just like you, and everyone gets to be respected in the same way. So none of these stories are true. None of them. And so we get to step back, and then that's why it's so important to stand in neutrality and not judge, and just step into somebody's world with them. Walk into their movie and see how they live and how they think, and say, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And that in itself is a judgment, but, or you can just observe and say, okay, this is my experience. And if they want your opinion in their experience, you can give it. But keep in mind that, in this platform, no one is right. No one is right. People get to let go of that. Well, I'm right and you're wrong because this is how I see the world. It doesn't matter how you see the world. In the scheme of things, you're a grain of sand on a beach. So you're welcome to do that. We're all equally important, but there are billions of us. So now what? Welcome to the beach of life.
Wow, Guru, you're on fire over there. I love it.
Oh, you're funny.
I wanted to circle back around when you were saying you go into one of your loved ones' movie and you're watching their view of your life, and then they don't recognize that you're there. Kind of touch on like different planes when uh, sometimes in the earthy world things appear when they're not really there, or vice versa. I don't know why that popped in my brain when you said that, um, but I
Yeah,
think sometimes we think, like we were saying earlier, things behind the veil happen. Uh, things appear. You know, you
they
might
do.
see a car, like you're like, oh, that red car, and then all of a sudden it's like you've been driving like 30 minutes behind it or something, and it's all of a sudden gone. Just touch on that, because I think that kind of segued into what you were saying, is like all our viewpoints are different and things are always just changing and moving. Uh, so yeah, just touch on that. I don't know why that came into my brain when you said that, because it's so true. It's like, you know, we might be staring at the same thing, but you could be seeing different things, and I could be over here. I guess that's what I'm saying, is like we could both be looking at the same thing. Things are always in flux or changing.
Yeah, totally. So it's, you know, once you start doing the types of things that I'm talking about, doing some really interesting things happen. And they happen to a lot of my clients, where they begin to see things that are outside of just the story that people are creating here, because they start to become aware of
Mm.
what's, just of the movements of everybody else and the stories they're creating in their worlds, and being able to step in and out of people's worlds and stuff like that. And then if you're standing in neutrality in your own world, then people call it the veil, right? So there's the veil is uh, how do I explain this one in a very, yeah, like John, how do I explain this one quickly?
Well,
So,
I think we could probably go back to the movie theater, right? The
well,
veil would be like the red.
the red coming down, sure.
I
Okay,
get
let's do this. Okay,
how
so
I think about it sometimes.
yeah, sure. So we have, think of it this way: our existence here and how we see it as human beings is the yin. If you've ever seen the yin and the yang, the white with the little black eye and the black, they kind of look like fish with the little white eye. It's kind of encapsulated in a circle, and it has that. Okay, so one cannot exist without the other. So we live in a world of duality here on this planet, and night and day, and good and evil, and you name it, it's here. We have it, and that's how we live our lives. So just the fact that we're living in a symbolic place of night and day shows how much good and evil are kind of going to be permeated at the same time and creating a mixture. So, but when it comes to the veil, we cannot exist the way we're existing without creating this other world at the same time. All right, which would be considered behind the veil. Now, behind the veil is a lot of different types of, like, so loved ones that have passed, energetic assimilations that we've created as human beings, because we're creators and we're spirits and we're powerful, and all kinds of other stuff that's veiled off for us so that we can have a different type of existence here. Uh, and part of the reason why that's happening, other than the fact that it's two halves of a whole, and it keeps everything in balance, so it's important. And that's a long story, and it would take a novel for me to explain, and I will one day, but maybe not right now. Uh, but but yeah, now I lost my train of thought because my brain like literally went 5 paces ahead. But let's see. So let's see. Okay, bring me back, John. My brain's gone. It left. Help me. Help me.
You're gonna write a book now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna write a book about this.
in terms of the veil, is when we see, when we peel back that layer, there's certain things that are happening on the other side of the veil, you were saying, and so that allows us to have this experience.
Right. Okay. Right.
That's
And so what begins to happen is once we start lifting that veil by raising our consciousness, we begin to see things that are on, the two worlds become one, so to speak. You're able to interact completely with that other side without there being this little tiny veil. And if you know what a veil is, if you've a veil is usually a very thin, transparent piece of fabric, usually silk or something, where you can kind of see through it, right? So the more you purify your consciousness with all four bodies, and you do go through the purification that you get to go through, and you start lifting the veil, and you start standing in neutrality, and you're standing as unconditional love, then things start to happen. You begin to see that there are you might notice orbs. You might, with your naked eye, see orbs floating in the air. You might have taken photos. I've personally taken full-on videos of them. There are, and my clients on a regular basis actually send me videos saying this is what was in my house, and it's a full-on thing. Like it's not like a small, oh, look at that little piece of dust floating around. No, I mean, these are glowing, floating green hearts in the air. Like, well, they're not hearts. It kind of looked like a heart, but it wasn't exactly like this perfect heart or anything. Surrounded by a purple hue, which blew my mind, honestly. She created this altar, and there was this thing that was just floating, and she took her camera and went all the way around it, and there it was. And this is just very fascinating that she was able to manifest that based on her training. And and that's part of ripping the veil open, just like, well, let's see actually what's on the other side. So there's so many different beings and spirits and all kinds of things that are constantly talking to you, or maybe they stop talking to you because you're not listening, because you're but they're always around because they want to support you in what you're going through on this journey. But if you don't know how to hear, they're just going to sit beside you, and they're going to be with you during your best moments and your worst moments and everything in between. But just because you can't necessarily feel them right now doesn't mean they're not there. Yes, they are. And then once you start going through this process, you begin to become aware of them. Not because you're losing your mind, but because they actually are there. And a lot of people who are about to die, and that their soul begins to separate from the body, they begin to watch the veil deteriorate. And there's a lot of nurses, and I know quite a few personally, who have watched this process, and they're completely convinced, no, there's no way that it's just the mind breaking down. They're seeing their loved ones in the room that have passed on, waiting for them. And because they're talking about things they couldn't know. They're saying things that they couldn't know. And I've watched this hundreds of times while people die. And I've observed it myself when people die. So it's just a breaking down of the veil. So because your spirit is the most important part of you, and it's being so often ignored, could you imagine what kind of things are waiting for you if you were just to get to that point where you could start to unpack that in this lifetime? It's a big old world out there when it comes to your spirit. And it's not simple. And a lot of people ignore it because it's not tangible. It's that simple.
So people, to ask you on that and ending right there, people that have access to it or are somewhat aware, they choose to not take it on.
Right. Yeah, they don't. And there's a lot of different reasons. One, they might not believe that it's true. Two, they might be too afraid to. But for those people out there who experienced a lot of trauma in their childhood, and it's unfortunately the norm, that there's a lot of the time there's two different ways to split off for those types of people. So empathy and narcissism are the yin and yang. They hold the same space together, so you can choose one or the other. And so if you go through that, at one point there's a conscious choice of going, depending on how you've already constructed your consciousness, thinking, okay, this is going to keep me the safest, I'm going to go this way. But a lot of people will choose empathy, and then they have a really hard time feeling as much as they feel. But part of the reason why that happens is up until the age of 7, you're running at about 1,500 neurological synapses, and they're all firing at once. And so, you know, and when you reach into adulthood, once you hit adulthood, it reduces to 750, and a lot of the doors close. So a lot of those pathways that are open shut. So your neurological pathway does that to protect you. Because if it's always on fire, you're going to just keep trying all these new things, and you're never really going to grow up. You know, your neurological system wants you to stay safe. That's the whole point of childhood, is to learn all the ways that you're going to stay safe, and then you're going to continue to travel down those neurological pathways so that you can, like, oh, you did this 50 times. This is going to keep you safe. You just keep doing that, right? So, and then adulthood, it shuts down. And there's plenty of adults that, you know, they just keep trying, you know, things that are dangerous, and then they, you know, bad things happen to them. But that's part of the reason why they shut down, because through our just through our physiological system, through history, what has been learned is that it's better to shut them down so that people start to grow up, and that they're fearful of trying new things so that they stay safe for the rest of their lives. Anyway, so if you're going to blow out, if you're going to go through a major trauma when all of your neurological synapses are firing, then, you know, it's going to create really big ripple, and it's going to blow out your gaskets there. And then you're going to a lot of the time it's going to be about being empathy or becoming psychic or something, like you're going to be able to kind of burst through a bit of that veil on your own, just from that experience as a kid. And that's part of the reason why that happens. But anyway, I hope I explained that okay.
No, that was really good. And also too, if one wants to picture the veil, it's like a bride's veil. It's like that. I
Yeah.
mean, going back up type of thing. What was? Yeah, I think that was it, Guru. In terms of, we covered a lot of stuff
We
in a
sure did.
short
Oh my gosh, we went around everywhere, didn't we? Wow.
time. I don't have anything else more to add for this week.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
No, I just for everyone that watched, I'm so grateful. Anyone in the future that watched, I don't know if Mohammed is still here. If you are, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'm really grateful. And then if, you know, if whoever watches this in the future, I'm so grateful that you could join us, even if it wasn't during the time we did it live. So thank you for that. And I hope you find the information useful. And please do, in the comments and any of my posts or in this post, let me know if there's any topics you'd like us to cover in the future, so that we can serve you, because that's why we're here. We're not here for us, we're here for you. Aw, look at that smile, John. I love it. Anything you want to say?
No, just thanks for taking the time, Guru, as always. And like she's saying, you guys, is we're here to serve you all better in 2023. And you know, what a pivotal time as the collective is, just to raise our consciousness, raise topics that we could all be talking about, you know, in our daily exchanges. So thanks for everyone tuning in, Mohammed, and future people tuning in as well. So it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Love you all. Until next time. See you. Actually, I'll see you tomorrow. I'm doing another live tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Or if you're watching this, then just watch the next video. Bye, everybody.